David Leitch's The Fall Guy just came out in theaters. We saw it, and we are talking everything about it. How's it going, guys? Welcome back to What Do You Think? It's me, Amir.
I'm Alvin.
And we are back for a new review. So like we said, we were talking about The Fall Guy, and we're not going to be going to any spoilers, but Alvin, give the audience their little synopsis on the movie.
Yeah. So the movie stars Ryan Gosling, Emily Blunt, Winston Duke, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Hannah Waddingham. The cast is stacked, but it follows Ryan Gosling, who plays Cole Stever, whatever he's Colt Stever, and Seaver, no T, whatever. He's a stunt double for Aaron Taylor Johnson's character, who's an actor, and some hijinks ensue where Aaron Taylor Johnson's character goes missing, and it's up to Ryan Gosling's character to find his actor.
Yes.
And that's pretty much it. That's the most you need to know getting into it.
Exactly. I think one thing is really interesting is you don't really need to know, because this is based off of a TV show. I didn't know that from like the 80s. And I think what works really well about this movie is the chemistry of the leads. You know, Ryan Gosling is hot off of Barbie from last year, and he has all the Kenergy. And in this movie, I think he is just as funny as Ken was, but he actually does a lot of really great action sequences where, like Alvin is saying, this movie really kind of shows like the importance of like the actor and their stunt double and that kind of purpose in Hollywood. And this movie is a really great love letter to stunts, because if you guys didn't know, David Leitch, the director of this movie, famously was actually the stunt double to Brad Pitt. So he was always he is very much like the stand-in. This story feels very personal to him, and also his wife. They met through she's a producer, so she produced the movie with him. So it feels like a really like natural kind of biopic for his life. But yeah, really, really fun movie. He's coming hot off the press of Bullet Train. And I think, I don't know if I want to speak for Alvin, but I know for me personally, that movie had an amazing trailer. And I think the premise is really cool. Like when you kind of hear about it, you know, it's all these assassins stuck on the bullet train in Japan, and Brad Pitt kind of has to survive it. But I think in execution and the writing, that movie kind of failed, or it faltered. And also, I wasn't the biggest fan of the casting of Brad Pitt. And I think this movie succeeds in certain aspects where Bullet Train fails, but it also fails in different ways than I think Bullet Train did succeed in. But I'll go into it a little bit more. Let the people know what were your thoughts coming out of The Fall Guy.
Yeah, so I guess piggybacking off of what Amir said, I was not that big a fan of Bullet Train as well. I found it kind of there's like no focus for me when it came to that movie, and the third act really goes off the rails, no pun intended.
Yes, that was good.
But thank you. For The Fall Guy, I found it a lot more enjoyable because of the heart. The romance is kind of the best part of the movie for me, because that kind of grounds the outlandish things that happen to Ryan Gosling's character.
Yeah.
For me. And
yeah,
then,
I agree.
Yeah, and then the action was really well done, and they were done for real, which is incredible to see. And
there's one certain action sequence where it was like the truck, or like it was like turned on its side, and they were kind of going through the streets. That was like an incredible action sequence. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, David Leitch does action really well.
Yes.
So even regardless of the story, you're going to get really great action, right?
Yeah. And one thing I will say is, I think, like Alvin said, Bullet Train isn't necessarily focused, and I think there are that issue is also present in this movie, where I was telling Omid when we watched it in theaters that there are confusing pacing issues of this movie where, you know, there's like really great breakneck speed when it's like coming to the action sequences, and the comedy is really funny, but there's a lot of times where the plot almost kind of pauses in what it's doing. Like there's this whole mystery of, oh, where is the actor? Where is Aaron Taylor Johnson? And Colt, Ryan Gosling's character, has to kind of find them. And when we're learning more about the mystery, we almost always hit like the brakes on it when he's interacting with Emily Blunt again, which is great to see their chemistry. There's a lot of really funny moments, and it reminds you why he's doing all of these things and why it's important for him to kind of become the super spy because of what's at stake. But I noticed there were times where it's like, all right, it slows down again. Like you're so excited to get the adrenaline, and then it pauses, and then certain moments where it goes through beats super fast, where it doesn't let you kind of sit with the moment where there's this really dramatic moment that happens maybe at the end of Act 2, beginning of Act 3, and you're like, oh wow, this is like really sad. Did this certain thing happen? And then they instantly pull the rug out from under it. I'm like, I think you could have just played with that moment just a little bit longer to let people kind of see the consequences of this certain event that happens. And I think that was the issue with this movie, where it almost feels jarring, where it's like, hit the gas brake, gas brake, gas brake. And then surprisingly, they have this like super late minute like action sequence at the end. Once it feels like everything's wrapped up, and I think they wrap it up pretty well as like a nice bow on it. And then they introduce this really drawn out action sequence that I understand it's meant to be like, this is our final love letter to stunts and we want to make it big and bombastic. But the way of the script, it just doesn't really work well. That I think they could have used another kind of pass on it, because I think same thing with Bullet Train. This movie is very stylized, and David Leitch has a lot of style, and I think he's great at directing and action. But I don't know who wrote this movie. I don't know if you know, Alvin, off the top of your head.
Yeah, so Drew Pierce wrote it, and I think I said at the time that he wrote Bullet Train, but he actually wrote Hobbs and Shaw.
Oh, so he's a consistent partner with David Leitch.
I believe
Okay.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, and also I think Hobbs and Shaw had that similar issue too, when after they lose to Idris Elba's character, they have to stop by
The Rock's
the
family.
Rock's family, and that kind of feels like
Yeah.
everything just stops and slows down, and then it comes back up again. So it does seem like, because I think Atomic Blonde and Deadpool 2 are very, very, very strong movies from David Leitch, and I do think Hobbs and Shaw I enjoy. I think it's a very fun movie, but I think this movie has that issue of like, all right, it looks like we just needed another like pass to really revise it and hone in on the writing of it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think for sure I can kind of see it being like a really strong first draft, but then after a few edits, it can be polished a little bit more. And going back to what you said about stylized action, my favorite action scene was the one in the nightclub when it kind of goes into a different
Oh yeah, yes, the
view.
drug trip.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
that
yeah,
was
yeah,
incredible.
yeah,
Yeah, that was great. I agree.
yeah. That one was good because it is like neon colored, but also highlights the outline of whatever
His suit.
character's on screen. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, for me, I kind of looked past the issues of the pacing because I will admit, yeah, it does drag in the second act. And they're also like when you think about the movie more and more, you're kind of wondering like, oh, why did this happen when this could have happened, or why did this happen after this, blah, blah, blah. Like you're kind of questioning it, but that didn't detract from my enjoyment of it. I thought it was still fun, and I hate it when people are like, "Oh, turn your brain off and enjoy a movie." But that is kind of how I went into it, where like you're not going into a David Leitch movie for something super emotional or super groundbreaking, right? He's not kind of changing the genre of a rom-com or an action movie. He
I
does
was.
it
I mean,
well and he excels at it, right?
I agree. I think to your first point, I do think there is a suspension of disbelief that is required for this movie, but I don't think that's a high barrier to pass. Like once you're in the movie, you understand what kind of movie this is. I think you buy it instantly, and I think that really works for it. But um, about the dramatic moments, I actually do think in like Deadpool 2, he does drama very well in that movie, where he gets very emotional, and I think Ryan Gosling as an actor can get there. I think Emily Blunt can get there, but obviously I don't think this movie is interested in being that kind of movie. Like you said, it's a popcorn movie meant for the summer to be, not to say like turn your brain off, but like a really really fun time. You get in, you get out, you don't really think about it ever again. But it is a great time at the theater. It's unfortunate. I don't know if you were seeing the tracking for this movie. It hasn't been great. The production budget of this movie has been reported as 130 million. Let's add a half of it for marketing, so let's just say 200 million for the budget. and opening weekend is at like 28 million, which is not a great luck. And I hope this doesn't mean that he's going to be like in some sort of director jail if this movie is a flop. I'm hoping through word of mouth and just having strong legs, because that I think usually is the name of the game for these original IP movies. Is people watch it and then it'll just kind of stay at the top for a while. But it is a fun movie. I will say though, I was kind of hoping this wasn't going to be the outcome for David Leitch. I think he's such a strong director that I didn't want this to feel like another. All right, that's a solid swing at bat. Let's see what he can do again next time, because I think that was already Hobbs and Shaw and Bullet Train. And since this story feels so personal to David Leitch, I would have loved for this to be like, this is the home run. This is like his new pinnacle movie to dethrone Deadpool 2. But it doesn't get there, which it's not necessarily fair to compare it to his other movies. But yeah, like let's go into anything else before we go into final scores.
I don't really
Emily
have
Blunt is great.
anything
I think Emily
regarding.
Blunt is great in this movie too.
Yeah, I read
She's
an
great.
article yesterday how there's like hurdles in this production, how there's things they had to overcome, and because this was supposed to be filmed before Ryan Gosling did Barbie, because
Oh
Ryan
wow.
Gosling signed on to this movie because of The Nice Guys, because he loved doing comedy in that movie, so he felt like The Fall Guy was a good project for him to flex his comedic chops.
Mm-hmm.
But then COVID happened and there's so many delays that he signed on to Barbie and he filmed Barbie, which kind of scratched that itch for him. But he
Oh
was
wow.
still attached to The Fall Guy, which is also another comedic role.
Mm-hmm.
But this was supposed to come out before Barbie and before Oppenheimer. And then David Leitch said he was pissed that the movie just got delayed and there were stumbles in the process. But then after the fact, he was like, "Oh, this is the greatest thing to ever happen to us
I
because now we have
agree.
Oscar nominated Ryan Gosling, Oscar nominated Emily Blunt in two of the biggest movies of 2023."
I
So
agree.
it kind of, yeah, it works itself out. And I guess one last thing is just I kind of appreciate how I said this in my letterbox. It sheds a light on the more underappreciated aspects of filmmaking when it comes to either stunt performing or like VFX or just even like ADs and first unit
Yeah.
directors and like all that, like your writers
I
even,
would have
right?
loved to see more of that, because like one thing that was interesting. I was telling Omi that this movie almost feels like a Tropic Thunder in the sense of, all right, we have this really interesting premise that is surrounded by, we need to film this movie, we have deadlines, the studio wants to cut now, XYZ thing. And like you're saying, I actually really like that they showed like, all right, there's like the demolition expert, there's the always panic, always stressed AD. Like, if you've been on a set, the AD is their job to take care of everything. If you're not on schedule, it's their fault, kind of thing. So I agree. I thought that was a really cool aspect, and I would love to see if that did a little bit more, because I think that's just such a unique aspect. But yeah, good.
Yeah. No, so that was just kind of like the biggest thing where it just makes unheard voices heard.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really cool. And I guess kind of transitioning into my score, I gave it an 8 out of 10. I told you guys out of the theater, I give it an 8 out of 10. I found more enjoyment out of most. Okay, we watched it with Amir, Owen, and Omid. I was the one who enjoyed it the most, but I think I also had my expectations just really low because I wasn't a fan of David Leitch's previous two efforts. So even though it was getting good buzz, still went in with like checked expectations, but I think it exceeded my expectations. So I really enjoyed this. I
That's
think
good.
that if you have any interest in it, it's worth checking out. I will say, I think without A list, I probably wouldn't have checked it out, but because we have A list, it's worth
You
the
took a
time that we
chance.
spent. Yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
exactly.
It is not a waste of time at the theaters, and I think maybe I went in with higher expectations because really like the director, and we were discussing like, oh, do we want to watch Challengers or this? And I was the biggest supporter. I wanted to watch this. I didn't. Challengers seems okay, but I know Alvin and Omen in particular, they really want to watch that movie. So I had a
Yeah,
lot
I
riding on
mean,
this one.
I like good movies, so what can I say? What can I say?
Well, you gave
Huh?
this an 8. You gave this an 8, so this is a good movie too.
This is a
But
good movie,
yeah.
but tennis. What can I say, dude? Tennis is interesting.
Tennis and Zendaya, right? I think that's what you said in the theater.
I didn't say anything about Zendaya. I said tennis. I've suddenly
Sure.
become a really big fan of the U.S. Open for
Oh
some
yeah,
reason.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So same thing. I really enjoyed this movie. I think there are issues, and I hope to see more from David Leitch, because I know Chad Stahelski. he's going to be working on a Highlander reboot. So I'm really excited to see his career. And I think same thing with David Leitch. They both had incredible careers, starting off as like stuntmen into becoming like world-renowned directors on some of the biggest franchises of all time. It's great. They're like the ultimate underdog story, and you love to see it. So for me, I give this about a 7 out of 10. It's a fun time. If you do have a A-list, I think it's definitely worth the weekend, or if you go for like 2 hours on a weekday, definitely worth it. Don't wait for this just to go on streaming. I think this is actually a really fun one to watch, especially in a packed theater. There's a lot of really funny moments. I know there was one moment at the beginning of the movie that I was like the only person in the theater that laughed. I don't know if you remember it. It was after
I remember you laughed for yes, I do remember it. It was the moment, the driving force of the movie.
So something. This is not really a spoiler, but like the beginning of the movies, you find out that Ryan Gosling he has an accident and then he stops being a stuntman, and the way they kind of just edit that scene, it's such a fast cut where you see him falling into they just cut to him on a stretcher. And I just couldn't help but laugh because like how fast of the cut it was hilarious.
It was, for me, I laughed because you laughed, because I thought you laughed at the scream, not the edit, because the scream was also like, what the heck?
Yeah, no, I just laughed at the idea because you didn't expect it to go wrong. Like they're trained to do this, so it was just a really funny moment. But that's us. I think it's a pretty good review from both of us. It is worth the watch. Next week is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes that's coming out, and we are both very excited for that. We're going to try to watch that Friday, also get a review out. Exactly, yeah. Alvin loves the apes. Anything else before we sign off?
Oh, okay. No, not much. That's pretty much it. Stay tuned. Summer season is upon us, and yeah, it's going to be a good summer.
Yeah, and as always, guys, if you enjoyed our content, please leave a like. Subscribe if you're new. It really helps our channel. We're having a goal of by the end of the year to hit 1,500. We're at like 1,330, so we're almost there. Really want to hit that goal. So we just have a great time doing this. Hope you guys like our stuff too. It's been me, Amir.
I'm Alvin.
Have a great one, guys. See you next time.
Yeah. Bye.